I'm Austin Murphy, and this is a presentation on AppArmor and HTTPS setup for IIS and Apache. We'll go over AppArmor first and then move on to HTTPS. AppArmor restricts software access to resources. If software is compromised by a breach or malware, the attacker will not be able to do whatever they want with the software. It's a mandatory access control system first released in a Unix distro, purchased by Novell and then placed in Ubuntu. It supplements the operating system discretionary access control that's already in place. It is an alternative to SE Linux and is much simpler. If we look at this chart, we'll see how short an AppArmor profile is compared to an SE Linux one. Profiles are what we apply to applications, and they're handled by the Linux security module. Hooks are placed in the kernel and they call out to functions that are provided by LSM. Here are some default installed profiles and some available profiles for database and email. Also, I forgot to note that AppArmor is for programs instead of users. So we're not restricting users. We are putting access controls on the actual programs. Custom profiles can be made and loaded into this directory here. And profiles are simple text files. They use the C style include directives, and we can comment too. These are a list of file access controls that are available. And access controls can be placed on networking, capabilities, sockets, signals, many things. There's a few modes we can put our profiles in. Enforce and complain mode. In complain mode, this is good for troubleshooting when we are building a profile. All the system calls will be logged, and then we can look in the log and see what the system calls are and decide what types of restrictions I need. Here are a couple of useful commands for AppArmor. AA status, when we type this into console, it will show us which profiles are loaded and in which modes they're loaded. A couple other useful commands. AA generate profile. This is how we can create a profile on a script, and it will walk us through the script and prompt the user to submit access control attributes for each system call. When we want to update the script, we'll use this command AA log prof, log profile. A couple of best practices and hardening recommendations for AppArmor. It should be used on applications that mediate user privileges. So set user ID, set group ID applications. These are two types of these are programs that allow the user to run as a different group or as a different privilege. Cron tab applications are good for AppArmor, web apps, web scripts, PHP pages included by web server, network applications that run on an open port. And AppArmor provides a command called unconfined, and this is used to identify applications that do not have a profile that are running on an open port. HTTPS IIS. Some background on what is HTTP and versus HTTPS. HTTP communications are all sent and received in plain text, and this is obviously a security risk because of eavesdropping on the network, spoofing, and injection. HTTPS encrypts all the traffic between the client and the server with TLS SSL certificates. SSL is deprecated. TLS is much more secure. People still call TLS SSL. So don't get confused. Google, Firefox, and other major browsers are incentivizing websites to upgrade. Google will increase your SEO scores so that more people will find your website. If you do not update, your visitors might be greeted with a warning banner such as this, and this could drive away a lot of your visitors. Uh, Another driving force is that payment card industry data security standards (PCI) compliance requires HTTPS for credit card transactions. So how can we upgrade on IIS? We will need to obtain a certificate from a certificate authority, and Windows Server or IIS provides a certificate request tool, and this can be used to automate the process. You can also buy one from a third-party seller, such as DigiCert or GoDaddy, etc. And it's important to note that you'll wonder, how come some of these certificates are so much cheaper than the other ones? I want the free one. And it's important to know that not all certificates are created equal. And there's different grades and classifications, such as domain validation or extended validation. The main difference between these grades is the amount of due care, due process that the certificate authority puts into verifying the company or website. So extended validation is the most secure and can take a couple days to be validated, while the CA looks into your organization and your identity. The good thing about EV is that the URL bar will be green, so that's kind of cool. Then we'll want to, once we have the CA or certificate from a CA, we will want to configure the server to read the certificate. And here are some steps so we can do that. We'll basically want to use the IIS manager and edit the directory security tab. Some best practices: disable all SSL and early versions of TLS. None of these that are listed are PCI compliant. Note that if you need to use an older browser, that disabling these can break older user agents. You'll also want to disable weak encryption ciphers, such as DES and RC4. These can be broke very fast. HSTS, HTTP Transport Security, is another best practice, and it forces browsers to connect to HTTPS. And it mitigates against attacks like SSL strip. SSL strip is a man-in-the-middle technique where it downgrades the HTTPS request coming in, and it provides the HTTP version. You'll also want to renew your certs every once in a while. This one says once a year, and generate a new key pair. But I've talked to some people in my Discord server that are in the real world, and they say they don't always do this. Obviously, if an employee leaves or the keys are compromised, you'll need to generate new keys. Moving on to Apache. It is important to remember when comparing the two that Apache is free, and it relies on volunteers for all of its research and development. So you might not have as many tools as IIS. And IIS is typically seen as more secure out of the box. Once again, we'll need a CA or certificate from a CA. And in the spirit of free software and Apache and Linux, I mention here Let's Encrypt, a website that provides free certificates. But once again, keep in mind that not all certificates are judged equally. A useful tool when setting up HTTPS on Apache will be OpenSSL, and this can be used for certificate signing requests. And when we are obtaining a certificate from websites like DigiCert, they will ask us to upload one of these CSRs. So we can use OpenSSL for that. And I didn't mention OpenSSL is a command line cryptography library, and it can do many things, such as install SSL certificates and generate key pairs. Mod SSL is a module, an Apache module that will be required to set up. And what am I saying here? OpenSSL is a dependency for setting up HTTPS. And if mod SSL is not enabled, here's the command. I listed a few, or the directions for how to configure the Apache server. Of course, this is a simplified version. We'll edit the Apache config file and add a directive to it called SSL CA certificate file. And here's an example of that, what that line might look like. Then we'll want to restart Apache, the service, and we'll want to open port 443, which is what HTTPS, the port that HTTPS runs on. Here's some more best practices for HTTPS. People used to use private key pinning. This has been deprecated for certificate transparency. And certificate transparency is a cryptographically assured public log of all TLS issued certificates. Google Chrome requires this for all certificates after April 2018. It allows CAs to be scrutinized. Malicious certs can be detected and revoked quicker. And another best practice is your hardening recommendation is to generate your own key pairs. Some third-party certificate where you'll buy your certificates, some of them will do this for you, and Let's Encrypt will do it for you as well. But it's generally better to create the key pair, create the private key on the server that will be applying it to. It's the most secure way to do it. And here are a couple of good strong private keys. I listed a third best practice here, and it's to use a header. There's websites that will scan your website or web service and say which headers can be added for improved security. Not all of these are HTTPS specific, but some of them are, and it's a good note. These are the references that I used to put together the presentation. All right, thank you. Have a good day.